This is not just a crisis of Roe. This is a crisis of our democracy.
I mean, they are quite literally trying to dismantle democracy.
Our democracy is what is at stake.
Protecting our democracy.
And the greatest democracy on earth.
Our democracy. Our democracy.
Our democracy.
So the rest of us can continue to live in a democracy.
Almost assuredly, you've heard claims from critics on the American left that aspects and outcomes of our political system are undemocratic. This tends to happen when, for instance, a new law or judicial ruling is not supported by popular opinion, or when a politician is elected by winning the electoral vote, but not the popular vote.
Get rid of the Electoral College.
The basis of these claims is essentially that a democracy should reflect popular opinion in almost every respect. But it's worth asking, is that what a democracy is designed to do? A democracy is a political system in which the people have an electoral say in the legislation. By that definition, the definition, giving the people an electoral say is what a democracy is designed to do. And that electoral say means that popular opinion is an important factor in the governance of a democracy. But if popular opinion was the only factor that mattered, that wouldn't be democracy. That would be pure majoritarianism. With pure majoritarianism, popular opinion dictates that whatever the majority want, they get. And that might sound fair, unless you happen to have heard of history, which is replete with instances of majorities bulldozing the rights of minorities on the basis of race, religion, ideology, geography. It goes on and on. Man's capacity for abusing his fellow man knows almost no bounds. But perhaps you're not familiar with history and you still think pure majoritarianism sounds like a good idea. After all, what could be bad about a political system governed solely by popular opinion? Popular is right there in the name. But the problem is, so is opinion. And if you've ever met anyone with opinions, well, you know that opinions can get messy. They change. Sometimes they change rapidly and significantly. Sometimes they change and then change back. And sometimes they are based on misinformation, lies, or even malicious propaganda. If pure majoritarianism somehow avoids becoming a weapon with which to commit gross human rights violations, it's still an engine for chaos, generating cycles of debate that never actually settle on anything. Or, worse yet, a tool to be manipulated by malicious forces.
G'day everyone, my name is Stephen Tripp. I'm the President of Australians for Better Government, and welcome back to the third Political Philosophy Masterclass. I hope you're strapped in and you ready for this wonderful ride that we've been on in the last few weeks. And of course, we've got the man here alongside us, Dr. Christopher Reynolds, the political philosopher himself. He has a PhD in constitutional law and political philosophy. And as you've known, if you've been watching the previous episodes, you know he's got a lot of experience in the US Congress and also the New South Wales Parliament, amongst a whole host of other things, including writing books and being a camera expert as well, mate.
Yeah, that's what I am. How come I forget what I did the last time? I don't know. I can't get a handle on this camera business.
You need to hire your own assistant to be able to set it all up for
a robot, mate. I need a robot.
Yeah. All right. So we've had, this is the third episode. We've done the Constitution and why we need a Constitution and how a Constitution should look. And last fortnight we did Christian values and how they influenced our system, or maybe how they didn't influence our system. Now we're on to the third one, which is what is democracy and what is the nature of society? And you said this is going to be a big one. So I'm going to hand it over to you. How do you want to kick this off?
Well, we're going to sort of, we got back into this thing about the four big questions: the nature of God, nature of man, and the nature of society. But the thing is, now that we're up to the nature of society, there is only one way to discuss this sort of social philosophy, and that's with a red wine. You've got to have the leather chair, the cigar, if you can do that, and the wine. Now, the problem is, I had my head in this bucket for, I had 12 years of this, and then I became a professor. Well, all this philosophy and red wines meant that I was on my way to becoming a dedicated alcoholic. So I didn't give it away, you know. But there's only so much thinking you could do. So we're going to jump into that and have a bit of fun today. And because I don't have, as it were, notes and lectures, we're just going to have a good little discussion about this. But you've got to hang on. You do need to go and get a glass of wine, because we're going to stop and think about things and then sort of take a little bit of derivative on it. So, all right, recapping. We did the nature of God, and we said some fundamentals like he's the creator and the sustainer of the universe, he's benevolent and engaging. And this becomes a really important thing, that we see our creator as engaging, not only with the creation to sustain it, but with us. And then we moved on to the nature of man. You know, have a drink at this point, and who is man? And you can sort of see that the fundamental that St. Paul throws out and says, we're all sinners, becomes back at us continually, where even as we stand today, we may have made the greatest progress in technology and prosperity and personal wealth, but we're still having to go to war, and there's still killings and people on the street, and there's still inequality. You know, have we made any real advance as a human soul? So with this business of just quickly covering the business of the nature of man, we got to the point of understanding that it's not just all bad, but there's some fundamental virtues or inalienable rights, as the Americans called them. And they toned it down or filtered it down to the 3 or 4 big words, that you have value in your life and you have a right to just life. It's valuable, it's precious, it's to be protected. You have a value, a human value in your life for liberty, of freedoms, of your speech, of your movement, of what you say, of religion, becomes fundamental to being part of being human, that you should have that. Prosperity, you should be able to have self-determination in what you do in your life. You should be able to look after your family and be prosperous, etc. And of course, that then ties in things like owning property. So, but the other one that's there, but it's not said when they mention happiness, is the right, the virtue of being intelligent and being able to actually engage your world and each other in an intelligent way, and not just have to be a slave to what others say. That's our background. So we come with that and we say, all right, now tell me about society. How do we then define society? All right, well, fundamentally, it doesn't take long to realize that we are a social animal. We get bored, lonely, depressed, when we don't have people around us. You know, it might be hard to believe sometimes that we've got to have others around us, but we do, whether it's family and all that extension family, whether it's a good friend, whether someone sitting in a coffee shop that we could just talk to, a mate, and all sorts of work and experiences. We're a social animal. And with that, we have this sort of idea that we've progressed as a society, and we need to somehow define who we are as a society. But the problem is we are the problem to ourselves, and whatever we do, we seem to be able to sort of muck it up. I mean, Erich Fromm, a great old philosopher, sort of came at it from the psychological side of things, and he talked about whether we are a sane or insane society with the values and how we don't seem to keep them, and our own sort of conflicts within ourselves. So we seek to form and transform society to meet our expectations and our dreams and whatever, which again is sort of part of that sort of transcendency that of being human, that we're not just finite but infinite. You know, we have a soul or a spirit as well as having a body, and you know, the whole idea that it's all going to end and I'm just sort of another animal is just a stupid idea. We wouldn't have all this writing and art and music if we were just, as it were, another animal. We are made in God's image. So when it comes to society, there are a number of sorts of avenues that we've taken as we've tried to work that out. But let's see if you've got a question, Steve, before I continue to just... I'll have a sip of my wine before we get into the next.
So we're talking about what is the nature of society. So when we try and link democracy to that, are we really talking about how we structure society?
Yes, you are, but you're jumping a little ahead because it becomes one of the options. You know, you can sort of understand that. I mean, so where does it sort of, kick back and say, well, what are the fundamentals of the different sorts of philosophies? Well, one says equality. We should have equality. Everybody should be equal. Well, that's good. So what do we call that? Oh, communism. How's that? Well, we take over the ownership of the property, and you can be as free as you like within the system as long as you vote the right way, and you can't own anything. Now, where does communism fall over? Because, I mean, it's there with Karl Marx, but it isn't. I mean, he can see the problem of the poor people, the proletariat and the rich and the divisions in the society, and he comes up with a whole system of things that need to improve it with great passion. But a system of government that became communism, he may have scratched his head and thought, I don't know if that's what I really meant. Because by the time he got around to one lot murdering, was it 19 million Russians and equivalent or more Chinese, to bring on this system whereby you will do what you're told. Oh, it's representative government and it's democracy because, well, we have these votes in the paddies and the rice fields, and they elect the regional guys, and then they elect the next lineup. And so when we get to the parliaments in Russia or China, and I've stood and taken pictures illegally in the great Chinese assembly hall. Did that go on? Is that public? I'm going to be in trouble. They come up with driver. But I've been there where the democratic Chinese system reaches its peak, and they make decisions, and they'd say and they are. They've got representative government. It's just this whole business of sort of taking over and restricting your freedoms and taking over your property, and you're doing what you're told. That seems to then produce nothing, because people lost their incentives, their desire, their drives, and their freedoms to actually do things, to be like God and create or innovate or progress. It's a nothing. It's just a grey sky society.
Can I jump in? Because, I mean, I'm not a philosopher, I'm not a professor or anything like that.
I like talking to you. I had enough of the academics.
But when I look at communism and you people say, oh, it's what they used to say to me in school, it's perfect in theory but not in practice. I'm like, no, it's flawed in theory as well, because the theory is that the government steps in and runs the society and takes over everything. But if you're an entrepreneur and you want to start your own business or you want to make your own money, you don't fit in within that system. So if you don't fit within that system, but you still forge ahead and want to do what you want to do, suddenly you end up in a re-education camp. I mean, am I on the right track with that, or am I overlooking?
Yeah, you are. You see, that's just one of them, and you're right. I mean, it's a philosophical thing of control, and we'll keep that word, sort of put that on the board there, power, and we're going to come back to that, because that's what we're talking about. How do you control society? When it comes down to the practical people and an ideology, it's all very nice you've got this theory, but how are we going to control it, right? Practical. So the second sort of thing is dependency. That is that we become a socialist society, and that's what Australia is. We are a dependency. 1/3 of this nation is dependent upon social welfare. And how do we get the money to redistribute wealth? Well, we dig it up and we sell it. Oh, we can't use uranium, but we're really happy to sell it to somebody else that will use it. We can't use this and we can't do that, but we're happy to be, what do you call that? It's some sort of prostitution. There's another word for prostitute that says, I'm sort of this, but I'm really that. And that's what our country is. We have this social system that we sort of skate along on other people's money, as it were, and we redistribute wealth and we become a dependency, socialist. The other one is, we think of America as the free society. There's it's sort of, go for it. You can be an entrepreneur. You've got prospects in front of you. You're free. But ultimately, as that little tape you played before, you get a system where the moment you decide you're going to vote and you're going to elect someone, you have a majority and a minority. And the minority didn't vote for the people that were in. They can whinge all they like, but there's a social compact, there's supposed to be, where you'll now do what the majority says. And there's been lots of people write about there's a problem, but come up with something else other than the equality model, where you're just going to give the people that don't have the ambition, that don't have the don't haves, has suddenly got all the rights and the powers, etc., as the do haves. And even in our own society, where we used to have the have and the have-nots, it's not seen, but we've now got a society that's divided on the no and the no-nots. So if you're in the system, you're on the internet, and you know the bubble, then you're going to make money and be ahead. But if you're not, well, then, you can call this number and see if somebody answers, and you can get on social welfare. The other system that's there, that's not so prominent in our country, is based on religion and values. Now, this becomes interesting because our country too was founded on religious, strong Christian values. But we now have this world of secular humanism, where we want to deny that God exists, and all, as Kennedy said, all man's problems have been caused by man and can be solved by man. Well, that sounds like the Tower of Babel, doesn't it? We're going to rise up and shoot our arrow into the sky because we can do it all and solve it all. Well, all right, have another drink of it. And so you've got these sort of choices and things that have gone on in the past, and we're sort of caught up in which model do you think might work.
Can I brought up communism, and I've had discussions with John Ruddick and the Libertarians on my podcast, Command the Narrative, before, and I said that communism and libertarianism were similar only because they're both they're ideologies, right? They're ideologies. I mean, they might be, they might think that it's this wonderful, fantastic, idea, but when you actually try and put it into practice, it doesn't work out so well. But the libertarianism, if you push libertarianism to its nth degree, you don't have control. You have almost anarchy. Is that
anarchy, mate? That's what it is. It's only a country club, Ritz Hotel in the lounge room version of how we could run a society, and there's no practical experience. I mean, at least the Russians had some experience. Off with his head, bang, 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 shoot them. I mean, that's where the rubber or the bullet hit the target. But these guys that want to sort of make it up really don't know what they're talking about.
But is that the point? Like, it's a balance between, so you have complete control and no control. When you're structuring a society, you have to find the balance there somewhere.
How that thought. Remember, we finished on that thought last week. So just put that, there was another one. Who's keeping a board out there so I know where we're coming back to?
I need a whiteboard here.
I'm writing this stuff down. Yes, well, hold that thought about the balance of power coming in. Now, all right, man in society is what we're doing. And I have got two major people that I like to refer to as they affect the society that we're currently in. And one of my favorite writers is a guy called Herbert Mead. I think his book is called Mind, Society, and something else, and Self. And he's got this idea that he starts off with understanding that as we stand there on the railway station and someone's beside us, we're in a world of interaction. We're in the hotel. We're going to say hello and how are you and whatever. We cannot help but be people that are in interaction. Now, that interaction or reaction or becomes responsive or responsible. Now, within that system, as he sort of pushes it out, and you sort of feel like you're in the tulip field, and we're all so free and able to interact, and it's all so wonderful. He gets to the point of realizing, or telling us, that out of that comes this sort of concept of not just the person standing beside us and how do I relate, but a generalized other. And maybe you've heard that term, the generalized other. And it becomes a sort of, what does the community want? Well, we don't throw our garbage in the middle of the street. Community does like that. We don't take our 5 kids out in the front lawn and decide it's bath time and hose them down. I don't think you can even hose down the dog these days. So there's things that the society, the generalized other, says that this is acceptable and this is not. So with all of that, as you then ponder that the sort of social conscience that we all walk around and go, oh no, I shouldn't do over 60 kilometers an hour. Oh, my conscience is bothering me. That, so you've got that sort of self-regulation idea. In opposition to that, in the same period of time in the 1930s, comes this guy from the East Coast, a sort of Harvard crowd, by the name of Talcott Parsons. And here is the Darth Vader of the modern world. And Darth Vader Parsons comes up with this whole idea of a thing called systems theory or functionalism. And he decides that society, instead of being free and open and relational and happy, needs to be controlled. And we need to put people in little control boxes, and we need to regulate, and we need to organize, and we need to have discipline and regulations and this sort of thing. But it gets to be like a virus, and it grows with more organizations and regulations. And today we call it the bureaucracy. And yes, it's grown all over our societies, and it's all functionalism, where they just continue to write more and more and more regulations. And it is this spreading virus, like something evil on a horror movie, that's sort of spreading across the society. So take, for example, here's Jim Chalmers in trouble this week over the Australian budget. And the poor fella's tripping all over it. And Jim's not, I don't know, I suppose he's an economist, but you can see he has trouble even putting on his tie. So he didn't write the budget. It's the bureaucrats behind him. So the poor fella's out there, and some other bureaucrats got into some other minister, and he's trying a curly question. And Kurt Chambers doesn't know. And of course, Albanese even knows less than him. And and somebody said, for poor Jim, he's learning what the underside of a bus looks like. Because they're just throwing him on the street and hope the bus run over him. And the rest of us said that we don't know the answer to the question. And, there's a lot of swearing going on in the back room, but we've got to fix this before you lose the election. Yes, Minister, we are very concerned for your welfare.
Can I jump in with a question there? Because I've pondered why the Labor government decided to bring in these new taxes, capital gains taxes and negative gearing rent. They seem to be so unpopular with the electorate, and the way that I answer it is that they've done it out of their own ideology. They've got this socialist mindset, and they think they've got some political capital to burn, so they've taken this opportunity to bring it in, and they've probably got the bureaucracy behind them. Obviously, they do. So we've talked about communist ideology, we've talked about libertarian ideology, and then there's socialist ideology. There's all different types of ideology that drive actions from people. But when we're trying to structure a society, should we try and structure a society that prevents ideology from seeping into our system?
Well, you can't you can't say I'm not going to wake up in the morning, which is what you're saying. You can't stop ideology. People will dream and think and have religion and values. So you've got an ideology that's there, and we have a variety. And I know
there's no way you're going to have a society where everyone agrees on the same ideology.
Yeah, that's all right. So therefore, you've got to accommodate variance. So that's the thing about the communism thing. You will all do what you are told. But we're not much better. We've become, under this bureaucracy, with all of this that runs our country, what are they? The unknown, overpaid, powerfied, or whatever the word is for too much power, too much pay, you don't know them, and they're just running this country from behind the scene. And the worst part of it is our blasted councils. And it's not the people who get elected, it's these CEOs that move around and run the thing, And when you see the regulations behind him, you think, I've got to take out a red pen and destroy the whole animal. It is just all over people's lives. There's this thing called the bureaucracy in the councils. But yes, there's this whole thing where the councils have become, not the councils, the bureaucracy generally, it's dehumanizing. If Mead was talking about the value of humanity in interactions, then under Parson it becomes this control factor, bring on the Darth Vader music. But it's dehumanizing. You will do what you are told. And it's desocializing. You have a regulation. You will stand up the front. You will say, yes, sir, as we fire the gun. And it's just this horrible thing. 1984, George Orwell had no idea. He had an idea of how bad it was going to get. And we just are so numbed with all the material things and our play phones and all the rest. We have no idea, well, a lot of people don't, about how we have lost the freedoms and the liberties and the space, etc., that gave us life. So we're in a mess. And we are in a socialist system of the redistribution of wealth. And that's what's causing a problem. Your question was, where does all the money come from? Or something like that. Where does, who came up with this budget? It's because of the Liberal Party ideology of redistributing wealth from the rich to the poor.
You mean Labor Party?
The Labor Party.
Yeah.
Get over it. It's sort of your anachronism. You're from the 19th century and the 1800s, mate. And the union movements. I mean, what is it, 15 or less % of the people that work are in unions? So, you still think you're in the communist thing of the proletariat and we're all comrades. Grow up, get over it. It doesn't work. You'll never get a space rocket off the ground, mate. And the whole thing. And certainly when you start saying, well, we've got to have this NBS. Now, I do not want to pick on people as such that are on the system that need something. But when I hear about a fellow that's in a wheelchair, by the time, he's in a wheelchair, fair enough, he needs services. But by the time the NBO ends, signs off all the things he can do, he's getting more than $1 million a year and sitting in a wheelchair. Now, there's something the matter with this. There's something the matter when you've got that sort of and I mean, how many homeless have we got that need somewhere? But it's the economy and the redistribution and the non-prosperous prosperity attitude that the Labor Party has that's destroying us. So that ideology of equality and socialism is destroying this country. We can all become communists, but who's going to supply the money?
Got a question or a comment from Mark Neugebauer, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. Mark says the values people accept and adopt squash incompatible ideologies. Do you think that's a fair comment?
Forgive me again, it didn't have sort of a logical sequence here.
The values people accept and adopt squash incompatible ideologies.
The values that people accept and adopt.
Yeah. Squash incompatible ideologies.
No. Just because I adopt something that I believe in doesn't mean that I'm going to go next door and squash the neighbour.
But I think what he's saying is the masses. So if the masses say, okay, we don't accept this ideology, then it's not going to be able to be propagated. It's not,
Well, I mean, it comes down to when you talked about freedom of religion, and for years in the past, religion dominated our society. The incredible thing about the letters pattern that formed this country, that was first given to the king, is it had that the Anglican Church was going to run all the bureaucracy in the government as they had done in England, and the king had a look at this and he said, well, no, we've got a fresh start here in another place in the world. And he got out his pen, it's in the back of my book, and he crossed the whole section out of the Anglican Church. I mean, knew there was bigotry. And he said, no, we can have freedom of religion, and wrote it in the column. So this business of the minority, squashing the minority because I don't like them, didn't come to this country, other than people bringing those attitudes. It wasn't a formal structural thing, of that sort of prejudice. So I don't think that a particular, that we sign up to say one particular. Where we do have an issue is this business about cultural diversity. You cannot, what is it, a society divided is a society that's falling. If you don't have homogeneity in the values and the beliefs that hold your society, your community, your ethos, your ethnic group together, you don't have a society.
Is that where multiculturalism fails? And that's what Pauline Hanson is talking about at the moment with monoculture.
Is that multiculturalism is a fancy word for multi-tribalism. You see, you got to watch it, because you see, if we brought people in, allowed people to come here, and then they were in education, they learned about our values, whatever they happen to be defined as, and you know, they learned that. See, if you go to America and you want to become an American, it's amazing. It always amazed me how people are there for 6 months. Like I lived in the Middle East, and Arabs would go over, various people, and they'd come back and, oh, I'm American. You know, well, you're actually just an Emirati Arab, really. But no, I've embraced those values. You have? And is your wife taking off a dish dash? Oh, yeah, we're not wearing that stuff anymore. And they wanted to embrace this culture, but it was there for them. There's a flag on every corner. There's a statue. There's a song, you know, the kids in school. And so people wanted to become part of that society. Here, what have we got? I mean, you know, you've got to really search to find a statue of anybody. And we don't have the respect of our culture. And that can change. We need to fix up our immigration statement. You know, I pledge, Americans say, I hereby give up any allegiance to any other foreign government or power. And if I have to take up a gun to defend this country, I will. Our promise is, oh, well, I promise to have a Vegemite sandwich on Boxing Day. You read it. We promise nothing. Oh, I will respect the law. What happened to the word obey? You know, and there's nothing in it. It's too weak. And we don't celebrate, get excited about our culture. And why then do we think it's falling apart? There's a good reason it's falling apart, because we have been robbed of the opportunity to have pride in it. And we've got
let's unpack democracy. So we've talked about some other systems. Let's focus on the democratic system now. So I guess my first question too, and this relates to the cold open that I played in the beginning, where they're saying, well, a true democracy is where 51% of the population puts the foot on the other 49% of the population. So if you look at America is a constitutional republic. They don't really classify themselves as a democracy. Are we a democracy here in Australia?
No. And they do. Now, you've got to watch for your terms there. You see, democracy, when it comes down to it, when we became a so-called a semi-sovereign, a semi-independent country, democracy was a dirty word. And what happens with America, despite anybody wanting to criticize it, if you start to criticize and say it's not democracy, then you don't know what you're talking about. And that's just the point. You don't know what you're talking about. You see, we talked about last week, what were the fundamentals behind that system of government, and all that Christian values that came out from Locke and starting, and in the Declaration, you know, we have the God-given this and the God-given that, and under God, you see, they understood their position as humans in a theocracy of something bigger. And then they come down to those 4 values of life. God has given us the value of life and liberty and pursuit of happiness and property. Now, they are Christian values. You're not going to get any other religion or society say, you have a human inalienable right to the value of your life or the value of your property or your family, or you have a right to progress your future. They are fundamental Christian values. So the person that said, well, America is not a democracy, she's thinking of this business about the majority and the minority. Guess what? Any representative system is going to have a majority and minority. Wake up. What else you do? You don't have elections, and you have a monarch or a dictator that says you're all equal, you're all equal under my left foot. Right? So you rather got a control person thing that's over the top of everybody. You've got this silly idea that everybody can be equal and have equal well, we do have equal rights, equal opportunities, which we call communism, which is another word called failure, or you have people voting for a system in a representative government that is called democracy, where the majority will always, you want to swing a government, you move a majority. So yes, that's
let me rephrase, because I left out something I probably should when I've asked this question. So the true term from what I've read is that America is a constitutional republic with democratic representation.
A constitutional republic
with democratic representation.
Well, the moment you say republic, you've got a democratic system. Representation. And what's the matter with that?
So it's not a true democracy in the sense that, as I said, 51% of the people vote to squash the 49% of the people. There's checks and balances built into place. So you can't just order, okay, well, we're the 51% majority, we want to just kill the 49% now.
Because what you're doing is, in the American system and in the Australian system, what you're voting for is parliamentary representatives. So they then run down to the House, wherever it happens to be, and then the debates begin in that format, and that then can become problematic in itself, and that's what we're going to discuss in a minute. But to say that the democracy is going to cause pain to the minority, it depends. Once they get in there, then there's always been this concept in the past, well, it has been in the past, where you're there for the people. You've represented for the people. We're out to control, to benefit the people. And so you get all our benevolent programs, whether it's hospitals or schools or nursing homes, and it goes on and on and on with all the incredible benevolence that our society in America then has. Now, if you want to say, oh, they were part of the minority, or they're not. They don't divide themselves on social need, and they get a category classification CB or something, and we're going to look after them and not the others. Society cares for those in need, as it has. But again, the moment you talk about care and a sense of social justice, you're back in the world of Christianity. It's not something that other societies, we look after the poor. No, we're going to send them out in the snow because they're a bit old, or there's too many babies in the family. Well, they can go to the snow with grandmas as we move the tribe further west or something. There's not the value of human life in these other instances, and we take for granted those Christian values that sustain our society. And that's but there's a point there that we need to pick up, if you may. But let's see if there's another question before I get to the mountaintop of what we're talking about.
Well, I wanted to ask you about the pillars of a democracy. So I'm just having a look here on the this is the Parliament of Australia website, and it's talking about the Parliament Explained. And if you scroll down here, it's talking about what is a democracy, what are the values of democracy. The values are tolerance, equity, freedom, respect, justice. But
excuse me, mate, I can't help myself. Where is one of those terms used in our Constitution? Please tell me. I've only studied it for years. There is not a democratic term in our Constitution. Maybe I'm wrong. Tell me.
Okay, well, what about this? The 4 key ideas of Australian democracy: active and engaged citizens, where citizens have a voice and can make changes in society. The second is an inclusive and equitable society. We work towards a society where everyone is respected and free. Free and franchised elections. We get to stand for election and choose who makes decisions on our behalf. And the last one, the rule of law for both citizens and government. Everyone is equal before the law and must follow the law.
They're lovely ideals, but they're not written anywhere. I mean, this is just stuff he's making up after watching Mickey Mouse on a Friday night. I mean, it's all lovely. He's getting it off the internet or something. They're great ideals, but we don't have equality before the law. Get yourself before our law courts and see how that works out for you. And I mean, where's this business of these two people getting onto Facebook and rubbishing and threatening to kill Israelis? Now, they're on Facebook. They press the button and they're on Facebook, or whatever it is. I've got the wrong system. You could bet I do. but they're doing a public thing. And the judge, they get to court, and some clever lawyer has said, oh, but they didn't sign anything to say that they knew that they were on this internet system. Well, what were they doing there? Oh, well, I've got to throw it out of court. Where on earth is the justice in this that you're thrown out? And try to be a father today. When it was the Brisbane Family Court says 98% of all the cases that go through the court, children are given to the custody of the mother. Now, that's the court saying that. Now, you're telling me 98% sounds equal to you? It's a sex-based thing. Anyway, I'm just picking two examples out of the air. But those other ones, too, are not written anywhere. They're lovely ideals, but they're not true.
What about this? Because it continues on this parliamentary website. It says the 6 key principles of Australian democracy. 6 key principles, all right? Let's see if you agree with these. Number 1, constitutional order. 2, liberal democracy. 3,
what's the second one?
Liberal democracy.
A liberal democracy.
So as a nation, we support the development and well-being of individuals.
Oh, gee, this is lovely. So, this is stuff, it's on the parliamentary website, been written by a bureaucrat who's been paid to sit there and come up with these bland sort of terms that don't mean anything. But let's see what his 4th bland term is.
Well, this is the 3rd one.
Pure.
I can't even pronounce this. Pluralistic society, an Australian society. Yes.
Yeah.
So Australian society is diverse with many different ethnic, racial, religious, and social groups all living together. Number 4, representative democracy. Number 5, respect for and tolerance of opposing ideas. And number 6, I know you're going to love this one. Number 6, responsible government.
Well, that's lovely, but I don't know whether the person who wrote that understands what is responsible government and how do we get it? And how do we move from representative government to responsible government? Good topic. Let's pick it up and then we can move to sort of winding this up, if you like. We had a system where from about 1855 with William Wentworth, went to the British Parliament and gave this great talk. And he said, we're now ready to have representative government. And you've got to think about this. What everybody accepted was you can have a parliamentarian that represents your district. We've got representative democracy, and they can then participate in the local running of your little colony. So they've got people in the parliament that are representing the others on the street and whatever else, and the farmers. Now that sounds like representative government. Well, said William Wentworth, we need to progress. We can't all stay with our feet in the mud with this sort of thing. And we've got to sort of look at this big concept called sovereignty. And sovereignty has to stay with the crown. Here, said all the parliamentarians. So I've got this idea for responsible government. Oh, yes, and what's that? Well, the Parliament will be responsible to the Governor-General, and the Governor-General will then write to the monarch, and then the monarch will get back to the Governor-General, and they'll all work it out. But everybody's going to be responsible and have a lovely holding hands type of thing and go, kumbaya, as I'm really in charge of the whole system, says the monarch, but I'm such a lovely person, you'll never hear much of me and all this. So we are a responsible government. But today, that's a dirty word, because responsible government is not popular government. It's a monarchical, closed system of restricted use and control of power. And that's the government that we actually have. And with a responsible government, democracy always was a dirty word, because that's people power. And this is not talking about people power when you're talking responsible government. You see, what we've got with our constitution was parliamentary supremacy. And it's Cromwell, where Cromwell got rid of the king and the parliament took over, and the parliament's going to tell everybody what to do. Well, when they formed the constitution, the fellow from Queensland, Samuel Griffiths, who was in charge of the little committee on this thing, said, oh, no, we're not going to have a section of the Constitution for the High Court. I'll look after the High Court through the Parliament. And he was out to take control of both the system of information going to the monarch, and even your rights before the court were going to come under the person who was the Prime Minister in the Parliament. And my goodness, if it wasn't for Andrew Clark from Tasmania, we wouldn't even have a high court. So, you know, when they waffle on about the value of responsible government, they're waffling on.
Okay, what about this question? Because it's also come up that there's two types of democracy, and both are, I guess, interweaved in our system to different degrees. So the first one is representative democracy, which I think we all understand. That's elected representatives acting on our behalf, supposedly. The second one is something that Australians for Better Government advocates for a lot more, and I think we need to build it more into our system to provide more accountability. That's direct democracy. So a referendum is an example of direct democracy, where the people actually vote on a proposal, or other versions could be recall elections or plebiscites. We saw that with the same-sex marriage issue that went to a plebiscite, and that was decided by the people. Other things are citizens-initiated veto, which we've been talking about recently. What are your thoughts on the two types of democracy?
I think that's very limited. I mean, we've already gone over the fact you've got a form of socialism and communism. You've got representative government. You've got what you just said was a direct democracy. But you see, but here's the two things. When you start talking about governments and power, governments and order, etc., and apart from the fact that when you read our Australian Constitution and several others, it's only a structure of format, of divisions of power and responsibilities. All right, you can do this and you can do that, and this part will be responsible for this, and we'll have a minister for that. So it's a protocol. It's a division of activities. Is what you find in the Constitution. Ours severely lacks any philosophical, religious, theological basis for why we have a government. We just have a format. You can change things about how you're going to move the men on the chessboard. So the thing is, the two things that are behind government is power and commerce. Nothing happens in politics that doesn't involve money. And so the thing is, with even our, where was the money in the Constitution? Where was the money in coming to Australia? And where is even the money now with what we do and how we manage it for the benefit of who? For the benefit of who? Well, if you're into a form of socialism like we are or whatever, you say the benefit of the people. Well, where did you get that from? Not in the Constitution. There's nothing there for the benefit of the people. But let's just sort of summarize this. In talking about people and power and commerce, and we're talking about democracy, and we are a responsible government. But what we're, any other form you want to look at, what people want, without saying so directly, is participatory democracy, not necessarily direct democracy, because it doesn't work. You can't get everybody voting on every issue at all. But participatory democracy. And this is the first instance, perhaps, that where you get people voting on referendums with elections, which we don't have and the Americans do. You could pick any issue. Crossings at schools or something. Should we have them or not have them? And you get so many people put in and sign up a petition for whatever it is. And it has to go on the voting thing in the next election as an issue that the people want and how they want it. So we should, when we start talking about from terra nullius, which is a Roman Latin concept of nullius, nobody rules the land, to terra regis, it's the king's land, or we call it crown land today under this system of responsible government, moving to terra populi. We're talking about, really, when it comes down to how could that work, what did I call it? Participatory democracy. You see, in this, that is that in governing of this country should not mean that people are just a spectator sport. That's not government, and that's not what we should have. People should be allowed to participate. not a spectator sport, which we are now. You know, we all watch the news and whatever else and see what the guys are doing on the football field of politics today. And so we've lost that sort of even notion of participating. And that's what you're really after, is a system whereby people can participate in their own destiny and what's going on in the government, rather than these other four old systems that have been sort of dragging around for a while.
Okay, so you've touched on something that relates back to what you got me to put a big box around before. Maybe we can finish on this, is the balance of power.
The balance of power, yeah. And how do you, yeah. See, that was the thing that we quoted the other week from out of the Federalist Papers. You know, if men were angels, you wouldn't need government. But we're not angels. So therefore the question is, how do you set up a system whereby the government can control the governed? And secondly, how the government can control itself. Now, the first thing that they came up with, it evolved, was this business of separating the powers, or the checks and balances of powers. Now, if I stopped and said, where are the checks and balances in the Australian system? If you think you've got one, it doesn't work in practice. Once you come out of the party and you're elected to be the leader of the party, and you go and say, well, I'm the leader of the party and I want to be the Prime Minister, not in the Constitution. And then the Prime Minister goes back.
Politicians would argue that what keeps them in check is the Parliament, and also the committees that go on in the background, the Senate committees.
Well, anybody that says that's selling you rubbish. I mean, I've worked in the system for years. How do you get the Prime Minister to do something? It's only his mates in the cabinet room that are threatening if you don't do something, like what's his face in England this week, Karma. If you don't start to pull it up, we're all going to lose our seats. We're in it for ourselves. And so you, rather throw yourself on the floor, on the sword, or we'll have you out by Friday anyway. So go out with some respect, because he doesn't have, what do they say? He doesn't have the numbers.
Is that where the tug of war is? So you've got representative government, where you've got politicians in the Parliament supposedly acting on your behalf, but as you just said, they're usually acting on their own personal interest or the interest of their political party. Then you have direct democracy, which you said probably doesn't work in the full degree, because you can't have people voting on issues all the time. Is the answer somewhere in the middle, where there needs to be more accountability built into the system, where the people can keep the politicians in check?
Yeah, see, the power is in the parties. If you're in let's pick on the poor Liberal Party that's down the drain at the moment. When you're in that system and you rise up through the system and everybody thinks you're a good guy, Fred, you're going to do what you're told, then you might rise up the system to the point that you're the secretary of the thing. But it's that admin that's doing all the polling that says to, up in Queensland, David Christopher, you can't bring up this issue, or you need to do that. So he then runs along and he says to his cabinet, now this is what we're doing, because that's it. And no one's going to challenge him. He tells them that. Or take Albanese for a minute. I mean, he says this is what we're doing. It goes to the Parliament. His party then has the majority. He could be in Bali at the time and they'd still vote yes for it. And then it goes to the Senate. He's got the power there, and it goes through there. You can argue all you like, and you could, who's listening? You've got your head out the window. Nobody's paying attention. And our Senate does not have the power of the US Senate. When do they can subpoena? And if they think you're telling lies, they can say, right, I want the marshal in the court and arrest that person and put him in jail till I decide that they were telling lies before the Senate. They don't have that sort of power. And it's the parties that are ruling our Parliament. And it comes with, where do you get to say something? You voted for Mr. Mack in your local district, and now he's sitting in the backbench doing what he's told, because it was the party that paid for him to be even in your seat. So yes, where do we go? More independence. And let's see how Pauline does. It's really quite an incredible time. Political history is being made where this person has stuck to her guns for so many years, and it's not, I don't know, this is a comment, and it needs to go there. Was it something that Pauline Hanson has done, or is it something that the other parties have done? Because there's a saying that parties don't win elections, governments lose them. And that's what we're seeing now, is that people are dissatisfied with the current, not just the one government, but the system that we've got. And I don't think that's unhealthy at all.
Yeah, well, Cos Samaras, who's arguably Australia's leading pollster, is saying that the feedback he's getting from people who are shifting their vote to One Nation is what they want to see the two major parties burnt down. They don't they don't agree with the way
the Coles and Woolworths backroom deal business has to stop. It just has to. Everybody can see that. If I don't mind me saying something, I was out giving a talk yesterday on the book to a group at Moreton Bay. Anyway, I sat down to have lunch with them, and somebody, wasn't me, raised the issue of politics. Wasn't me, raised the issue of politics. And the woman on the other side of the table in the 60s, she said, "There's only one word to say when it comes to Australian politics today," and everybody stopped looking. She said, "Pauline." Right? I mean, the energy that he was this woman, that it sort of, there was something about came over that it was a whole new idea. But she was upset as I listened to her statement about the current system of what we're doing. Responsible government is an old, ragged system that came out of the 1800s that had to do with sovereignty and power remaining with the Crown as they oversaw their financial interests in this country. Clause 58 in our Constitution that needs to be scrapped is a perfect example. Any legislation that's written in the federal parliament goes to the Governor General. He sends it to the monarch, and the monarch, 2 years later, has 2 years to decide she didn't like it or he didn't like it, and then calls the Prime Minister and says, "No, you can't have that," and just don't even bother. I'm not signing it, or I'm rescinding it. But why have we got a system where 2 years after something, they still have that sovereign power? Well, that sort of sovereignty needs to come back to the people, and it needs to come back in a form of participatory democracy where we have more say, and we can vote on our phones on things. We can do surveys and get the numbers. But so we're in a different age. And just to finish on this, the last time we talked, I quoted Jefferson of saying, Constitution, some people look at them like they're the Ark of the Covenant. They're so precious you can't touch them. But you might as well require a man to wear the same clothes as he did as a boy as not to realise that constitutions need to evolve and change. And the man that wrote English Clark, 80% of our current constitution, said the same thing. Things will change and evolve, and you have to allow the system of government to actually be a reflection of what the people want and are able to do in managing their own government. And that's what we're up to.
Very thought-provoking stuff. We can't flesh all this out and get all the answers in one episode, so that's why we're doing this series every fortnight. Same ABG time, same ABG channel every Thursday fortnight at 4 p.m. And we'll continue having these discussions because I think they're important. And I think it's something, even just for me, trying to get my head around a lot of this stuff. No one has a perfect system on how we should structure our society, but that's what we should always be working towards, trying to get a system that's optimal for everyone. So
I'm sorry I get so passionate about this sort of stuff, but I mean, you read me that stuff by some government bureaucrat that seems to, you can hear the sort of the violins in the background of his halo. We have this wonderful system, and you're full of nonsense. And besides that, we'd have to stop because my glass is empty.
Yeah. All right. Well, if anyone's interested in what we're trying to do at Australians for Better Government, please head to our website, australiansforbetter.com. You'll find all our proposals on there. You just hit our proposals and you'll find them all. We have 5 different pillars. Restoring, we'll go to it here. If you click that link, goes to our mission, which is reforming the Constitution, ensuring a true separation of powers, empowering voters, which is what we need to see more of, enshrining our freedoms, and also instilling pride in Australia. You'll find all of that up at australiansforbetter.com. You can sign up to be a member. Yes?
That's a far better list of 5 than you read me out from the federal government.
Well, that's why we're encouraging people to join us, to join Australians for Better Government, so we can start putting pressure on these politicians and bureaucrats. And hopefully move to a better system here in Australia. And while you're at it, if you click the merch page on our website, you'll come to our store and you can see a lot of merchandise that we've put up there. We've got mugs, we've got those T-shirts there, which look quite good, jumpers, hats. I think the hats are great. And there's a whole selection there up on the website. How are you sick of government? Yeah, let's fix it. Maybe you can wear that shirt around and start conversations with people in your area. And you'll find all that up on the website. It supports us. We make a little bit of money from it, and it helps us in our fight to, as I said, put pressure back on the politicians. And lastly, if you want to know more about Dr. Christopher Reynolds, you can head to his website, drchristopherreynolds.com. You can get a copy of his book, What a Capital Idea. If you hit that link there, buy the book. You can go through that page to purchase that book, which is about the history of Australia from 1770 to 1901. He uses all primary sources for that research, and he exposes a lot of stuff that hasn't been uncovered before. So I encourage everyone to go along to that website and check out that book. But you're in the final processes of writing your new book, Dr. Reynolds. Tell us about it.
I have finished it. I have finished it. This is amazing. That's what everybody else says about the book as being amazing. I've written up 20 stories of people, and it's such a variety. I mean, all the liberals are going to love me, and liberal people. I mean, there's a Chinese guy gets a story, and the German Jew, and there's a couple of convicts, a few politicians, and an equal spread of females throughout the whole. But they're great stories, and I so enjoyed writing up these people's lives and how they, added to and coloured our history. So it all goes off to the printers tomorrow. So there's a new edition of What a Capital Idea that's going off for the third edition of that book, and a new copy called Leaders and Larrikins, Great Australian Stories. So we're up for a book launch in October, November. But you are going to want to read this book. Everybody just says it's just amazing, because what I've done is called a faction, which is a mixture of facts and then the conversation. So I've had to sort of pin together out of diaries and whatever, the conversations between people. But you're walking on set. So this is all like Netflix on paper, where, action and who walks on and what goes on. But, you're going to meet Matthew Flinders and all of his troubles, and Hamilton Hume and William Wentworth, and so it goes on and on. But it's I enjoy rereading it. It's just incredible what I've done with this book. But it's going to be a terrific book that's really going to give you a sense of pride in your nation. Leaders and Larrikins, there'll be more about it next. But you do need, if you've got any interest in Australian history, you need to sort out the facts, and you need to get into What a Capital Idea. Even His Majesty King Charles has written to thank me for sending him a copy of the book. So it's been that popular wherever people get to see it live. Thank you very much, Stephen.
Yeah, so the book launch, October, November. I'm sure the movie launch will happen sometime after that.
Oh, mate, what year is this? 27. We're up. We'll play for this. Then we'll take our popcorn and wind to the theatre and watch it on the big screen.
Yeah. All right, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this third edition of the Political Philosophy Masterclass. I thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And hopefully you've found some value in this. Hopefully you found it very thought-provoking. And as I just said, if you want to support Australians for Better Government, please consider becoming a member. Please consider getting some of our shirts and hats and spread the message of Australians for Better Government. And of course, support Dr. Reynolds and get a copy of his book as well. But for now, we'll see you next fortnight. Same ABG time, same ABG channel for the next edition of Political Philosophy Masterclass. So see you next time.